Welcome to Tokyo Wave, recorded in a live studio in Harajuku, Japan, with your hosts Aaron and Parker. All right, everyone, welcome to episode 93 of Tokyo Wave. We are your hosts, Aaron Randall
and Parker Allen. On Tokyo Wave, we bring you weekly updates from our studio in Harajuku.
Join us in segments featuring this week's top news,
political happenings,
business,
and other random garbage.
To get us started, here are this week's top news highlights.
Japanese government may require companies to release gender wage gap as early as 2023.
Shareholders reject plan to split Toshiba into two companies.
Driver's license center in northern Japan caught collecting unnecessary fee for 15 years.
This week in Japan. Alright, our first story. Japan government may require companies to release gender wage gap as early as 2023.
The Mainichi has reported that the Japanese government has begun considering requiring companies to disclose wage levels by gender in order to visualize the wage gap between men and women. The move is expected to be implemented as early as next year to encourage companies to make efforts to correct the disparity.
The government plans to require information to be disclosed in accordance with the Act on Promotion of Female Participation and Career Advancement in the Workplace, as well as in annual securities reports.
According to the 2020 Basic Survey on Wage Structure, women working full-time earn a scheduled monthly salary of 250,000 yen, which is about $2,070. Just over 70% of men's 340,000 yen, which is about $2,800. The wage gap is particularly significant for those aged 55 to 59, with women earning on average 270,000 yen, which is about $2,200 USD, per month compared to men's 420,000 yen, which is about 3,400 USD. A Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare official analyzes that the reasons for the wage gap are that, quote, there are fewer women in management positions and that they have been with the company for shorter periods of time than men.
Japan is considered to have a relatively large wage gap between men and women. According to a 2021 survey by the OECD, the income gap between men and women in the US and Europe is in the 10% range, but in Japan, it's 22.5%. Japan ranks third worst among the 38 member countries, behind South Korea at 31.5% and Israel at 22.7%.
By having companies disclose information on wage disparities, the government aims to raise awareness among businesses and accelerate efforts to correct the disparities. Under the Female Participation Promotion Law, depending on company size, companies are required to select and disclose one or two indicators, including the ratio of female employees hired, the percentage of male and female employees taking childcare leave, and gender differences in length of service. Also, that job seekers can use them as a reference in selecting a firm.
The Labor Ministry is mulling amending the ministerial ordinance to expand the system and require the publication of wage levels by gender, starting with large companies. The scope of the publication, including employment status and age, will be determined later with the relevant bodies.
Mulling. How often do you see that in Japanese news?
Yeah.
We're considering it very seriously. In addition, until the fiscal year ended March 1999, annual securities reports were required to list by gender the number of employees, average years of service, average age, and average salary, but the gender breakdown was removed in consideration of the burden on the companies. The Financial Services Agency is now considering bringing back the entry of average salaries by gender.
Wow, so I can kind of speak to this from some personal experience I had working at a real estate company outside of Tokyo and more like the Inaka. And I think within the whole company's history, there was never a woman in a management position, which is absolutely terrible because there was actually the split between male and female employees was probably like 50-50. So there were a lot of women there that were in their 50s and whatnot, and they just never were put into leadership positions at all.
You know, it's kind of interesting to look at it from a historical perspective. The situation Japan is facing now kind of reminds me of the United States in the 1980s.
Right, yeah.
And so all of this rhetoric about getting more women in the workplace and more balanced gender roles, these are all things that we're hearing in Japan right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we heard them in the United States 40 years ago.
Yep.
Kind of puts things into perspective.
Yeah.
Not a good look.
For sure. I could just imagine too, like being able to look up on the internet the gender wage gap, especially for applicants looking to join certain companies. For those in Japan, I think it would be not shocking how bad it is, and it would also just be depressing, like for applicants. I think it would make a lot of applicants lose motivation to join certain companies.
Well, and I think this is an important move, and I hope it actually happens. Obviously, this mulling could occur for some time, but if it actually is realized, we could see a situation in which companies finally have a fire under them to do something about it.
Yeah, for sure.
And if they do something about it, then Japan will have a more equal society. We'll see more women actively participating in the workforce. And also we can hope to see a Japanese society where women are seen as just as good as men as candidates for managerial positions.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it like that, but that is the current problem that we're facing. Nobody's talking about it, but in Japanese companies of all sizes, men are being favored over women for these managerial positions. Until this changes, this wage gap will not get better. Because obviously with greater responsibility comes higher pay. And, they're not just going to give people more money to do the same job. So getting higher salaries and lowering that wage gap means giving more manager opportunities to female candidates.
Right. Good point. All right, and up next, shareholders reject plan to split Toshiba into two companies.
Kyodo News has reported that a majority at an extraordinary shareholders meeting on March 24th rejected a plan proposed by Toshiba to split itself into two listed companies.
Toshiba, a Japanese household name with a nearly 150-year history, had sought support for the new reform plan after its early proposal to divide into three companies was met with opposition from some major shareholders.
The outcome of this vote is not legally binding, but indicates likely rejection when the company plans to hold a regular shareholders meeting in June for a final decision.
Toshiba management had defended the new plan as less costly and more stable than possible alternatives.
Alternatives, eh? Like, going bankrupt?
Hope that's not the case.
Toshiba's fortunes have fallen since the March 2011 Fukushima nuclear disaster, when a tsunami in northeastern Japan sent 3 nuclear reactors into meltdowns. Toshiba is involved with the costly and precarious decommissioning effort, which will take decades.
The company's reputation was also tarnished by an accounting scandal, which involved books being doctored for years. Founded in 1875, Toshiba was a manufacturing pioneer for everything from electric rice cookers to laptop computers. It also invented flash memory, but that division was sold off as its fortunes tumbled.
Toshiba infamously acquired Westinghouse of the United States in 2006 with much fanfare, making nuclear power a key part of its business. That apparently was not a very good idea, and subsequently, Westinghouse went bankrupt in 2017, saddling Toshiba with huge red ink at that time. Toshiba sold the Westinghouse business in 2018.
Wow. You know, a lot of these big Japanese megacorps, Toshiba, Panasonic, Yamaha, I wonder if Toshiba was the only one to go into the deep end with nuclear power in 2006, because that was a bad time to get into it, right? Just like...
Well, at the time, I mean, if you looked at Japan's energy mix pre-2011, nuclear power was a clear solution.
Yeah, it was everywhere.
Because it was either that or gas or coal or oil, and all of those are very dirty. They're not sustainable. They're not renewable. And all of those things, because Japan isn't mining for oil, obviously, we don't have huge oil reserves here in Japan.
Yeah.
All of the raw product that Japan needs to generate electricity using traditional means is imported. You ain't got to import nuclear power.
Yeah.
You can just make it on site.
Yeah, but just the thought of post 3/11, just the thought of having all these nuclear power plants on the Ring of Fire is just not the greatest thing to imagine.
There's a good Johnny Cash song about that.
Really?
It goes... I don't think it's about nuclear power, though. It is called Ring of Fire, though.
Ring of Fire, yeah.
And up next, Driver's License Center in northern Japan caught collecting unnecessary fee for 15 years.
The Mainichi has also reported that a driver's license center administered by Akita Prefectural Police in northeast Japan collected an unnecessary fee possibly for 15 years due to a misleading expression in its internal rules.
The Driver's License Center announced on March 18th that it had collected the fee from some applicants to whom it issued licenses between January 2016 and the end of December 2021. Assuming there is a possibility that there were more people affected before 2016 when the document storage life expired, rather conveniently, the prefectural police is calling for people to contact the license center if they think they may have been overcharged.
According to the prefectural police, the license center had collected an unnecessary fee of 2,050 yen, that's about $17, each from 86 people since January 2016, totaling 176,300 yen, that's about $1,460. This mistake was made apparently because there was a vague expression in the internal rules.
And I'm guessing they vaguely interpreted that vague expression as, we can charge those assholes more money. So, in Japan, when an individual who holds multiple licenses for different types of vehicles renounces some of the qualifications and has a new license card issued on occasions other than having the licenses renewed or reissued, they should not be charged a fee. However, the Akita License Center mistakenly collected the fee in such cases. The rules began to be applied around May 2007, and police say there is a possibility that the fee had been mistakenly collected since that time. A possibility, eh? The prefectural police's personnel in charge of operational improvement noticed the cases at the end of December 2021 while reviewing the rules.
Police have already contacted 86 people and said they will start with refund procedures. An official said that they will make efforts to better organize rules and manuals and have executives improve management of operations.
Yeah, sure.
Once again, I'm thinking back to my days at the real estate company. This kind of stuff happens all the time here.
Overcharge. And, I mean, if the police do it, who's going to arrest them?
This is a big thing here. I think we both know in certain industries in Japan, they take as much as they can get. And the laws are very gray, and ambiguous.
And that reminds me, like, if we're on the subject of driver's licenses, one of the biggest, I'm sorry to say, scams in Japan is trying to get your driving license.
Oh, really?
If you want to get your driver's license from fresh and do everything at a school without needing to take a very, very, very ridiculously difficult test administered by the police, you have to pay around $4,000 to do the coursework, which can take up to a year.
Whoa.
$4,000.
I have heard this from a Japanese friend before. I haven't gone down this road. Parker, did you go through this?
So thankfully I was able to transfer my US driver's license, but that was also quite a headache, and it really comes down to the ridiculously complicated and difficult system for the testing. And it's a combination of written tests, which include the most ridiculously worded questions, in, of course, Japanese, that you could imagine, paired together very daintily with an actual driving test, which is also absolutely ridiculous and is not a test whatsoever that measures your actual driving ability. It is a test of how good you are in following the rules to the T and driving like a robot.
It sounds like it's a test that just wants you to memorize a bunch of stuff for the test, not necessarily related to driving.
It's a test for the test.
Yeah.
It really is. And so
Yeah.
It's actually funny. I mean, there's even a boutique industry for people who want to change their foreign licenses to Japanese ones that will basically, it's like a cram school, and they will sort of show you all of the ridiculous things that you need to do for the truncated test to show your quote-unquote driving skills to the Japanese police.
So I know regular Japanese, it's about a month, right? For the driving school?
If you do it every day full time, yes.
Every day full time is about a month.
Yeah, and
But-
if you want to do it like as a working person, then it's 6 months to a year.
Wow.
And there's a waiting list, baby. Welcome to Japan, Mr. Bond.
Yeah, because I don't know if I'll ever get my license here, man.
It is a pain in the ass. And
Yeah.
so I didn't have to do the whole $4,000 shebang because I transferred my license. However, I got my license when I was 18 years old. And I was in Japan at the time. And being an American, growing up in the 2000s, there weren't a lot of opportunities to drive a manual transmission or a stick shift. So I chickened out and I got the automatic only license.
Wow. There's
Which-
an automatic and manual. Or
Exactly.
Separate. Wow.
Separate. And so totally separate
Yikes.
exams. This was a smart idea at the time for me because honestly, I wasn't that great at driving a manual. But a couple of years ago, I decided I wanted a manual, and I now own a manual transmission car. But in order to get that license, I had to go through the full shebang at a Japanese driving school.
Oh my gosh.
And just to change from an automatic to a manual, I was out $1,000.
And how much time?
About a month.
Wow.
Thankfully, I was able to do it during the early days of the pandemic before everyone and their mother went to driving school because of all that extra time they suddenly had.
Right.
And so I was able to do all the coursework. And for me, it was actually helpful because being in Japan without a license that allowed me to drive a manual transmission, I didn't really have any opportunities to practice. So was it a good experience for building my skill? Yes, it was. Was it worth $1,000? Hell no!
Well, it's also good to hear there's a truncated solution for a lot of foreigners like me who have been here a while and didn't convert their license. I think, is it an old rule that you were able to convert the American license or whatever license to Japanese within the first year?
So you can convert anytime as long as your US license is still valid.
Oh, I have a valid U.S. license.
And so you can do the truncated procedure.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And so the only problem is you have to take the test. And so you can choose automatic or manual. And either way you slice it, it's pretty friggin' hard. And
Gotcha.
Top tip for people who want to transfer their licenses, go to one of these cram schools.
Yeah.
There are places out there, you search, transfer Japanese license English, and there are schools, and basically they tell you how to go to the police station and take the ridiculous driving test, which isn't as ridiculous as the test that you have to take if you want to take it cold turkey, but it's still pretty ridiculous.
Gotcha.
Like, for instance, before embarking on your journey, looking under the car to make sure there are no obstacles or children or dogs or ostriches, that you might brutally murder when taking off.
I've heard you have to embellish, like if you're turning your head to the left, you have to like jerk your entire body to the left and like make it very overly obvious that I'm looking left now.
Like literally, you've got a cop, like a real police officer in a police uniform, sitting next to you, watching your every move from start to finish.
Wow.
That is the test.
Man.
And it's stressful. It is definitely an anxiety-inducing experience if there ever was one. However, if you can take it cold turkey and you don't need any additional instruction and you're able to pass on your first try or second try or third try, or you can try as many times as you like, it only costs $50.
Ooh.
Yeah, so the incentive for transferring it versus, taking your Japanese driver's license from zero is huge.
Yeah, I bet.
It's the difference between 50 and 4,000. It's a big difference.
Yeah, no, for sure. Wow. Crazy. Well, good luck to anyone out there who is considering getting a Japanese driver's license.
It's definitely worth it. Driving in Japan is awesome, but it is difficult.
All right, and up next on Tokyo Panic Room, we're going to talk about Japan's recent electrical power woes and what's going to happen next.
You're now listening to Tokyo Wave.
Kyodo News recently reported that the Japanese government on March 23rd lifted its warning for tight electricity availability for Tokyo and 8 other prefectures in effect since March 21st, as supply is expected to improve with increased solar power generation.
But the industry ministry continued requesting firms and households in the region to use electricity more efficiently, given an insufficient supply capacity as some thermal power plants remain offline following a powerful earthquake.
The government's warning over electricity availability came as a surprise to the Japanese public, as it was the first such alert issued under a system introduced in 2012 to avoid a repetition of the rolling blackouts seen after the March 2011 earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear disaster that hit northeastern Japan. These electric power alerts are issued when power demand is expected to rise above 97% of total supply capacity.
So Parker, I wasn't here for 3/11. How bad were the blackouts in Tokyo? Some friends, not in Tokyo but out in Chiba, told me so it lasted for like a month on and off.
And so it was, what they would do, it was a scheduled blackout.
Ah.
So like for 3 hours, you get a blackout, and then for 3 hours, another place gets a blackout.
Gotcha.
I was really lucky because at the time I was living in Yoyogi, which is in Shibuya Ward, and they very conveniently decided that because of all of the embassies and senior government officials who live in that ward, we didn't get any blackouts.
That makes sense. Shibuya, probably Shinjuku as well, I'm guessing, those areas.
Exactly. So it was sort of a big FU to people living outside of central Tokyo because they got blackouts, we didn't.
Yeah. The warning in areas serviced by Tohoku Electric Power Co. in northeastern Japan, the region hardest hit by the March 16th quake, was lifted on March 22nd.
On March 23rd, Tokyo Electric Power Company Holdings said the ratio of electricity usage to total supply in the service area in the peak time of between 9 and 10 a.m. was 93%, adding that the supply and demand situation is, quote, slightly severe.
The power company said the situation was very severe the previous day on March 22nd, when around 2 to 3 million households in the area serviced by TEPCO and Tohoku Electric were feared to suffer a blackout at one point.
So this, I don't know if you saw this news. It was, I had just gotten home and all of a sudden I got some line messages saying like, be careful, there might be a blackout. You should go ahead and take a bath because if you don't do it now, the power might go out. Then you won't be able to take a bath. I thought to myself, this sounds like hearsay. This sounds like fake news. And so I immediately got on Twitter. I immediately looked at, official news sources and it was official. And I was like, holy shit, this hasn't happened in a decade. What is going on?
Yeah. I mean, I got the same warning. I found out about it earlier in the day and they said like, I think from 8 to 11, it was like definitely going to go out. Early in the day, they were like, yes, it's going to go out. Expect it to go out. So I was trying to get everything done before 8 o'clock as well. Yikes. Yeah.
Chief Cabinet Secretary Hirokazu Matsuno told a press conference, quote, although the possibility of facing a blackout due to power shortages has receded, we would like to continue calling for the efficient use of electricity within a reasonable range. Because everybody knows what that means.
TEPCO on the morning of March 23rd stopped receiving power supplied by 4 other utilities, including Hokkaido Power Electric Network. The other 8 prefectures serviced by TEPCO are Ibaraki, Tochigi, Gunma, Saitama, Chiba, Kanagawa, Yamanashi, and Shizuoka.
Kind of tells you how bad the situation was.
That's a lot.
We were drawing power from Hokkaido.
Yikes.
I didn't even know we had power lines that went to Hokkaido.
Yeah, man, the power grid here is wild. This gets into more hearsay, but a couple of years ago, one of my friends found an article saying that there was rumors that the power might shut down. This was like the summer of like 2019 or 2018. So I think the grid system here has been in like a state of, if something happens, we might be screwed kind of state, especially since 3/11. So
yeah, and obviously the risk because of earthquakes is perpetual. We don't know when an earthquake's going to happen, and we don't know what level of damage will, of course, result from an earthquake. The gift and the curse of Tokyo's and, of course, Japan's larger power grid is that there are systems in place to have sort of scheduled blackouts.
Right.
And so that's why, of course, they were saying there might be a blackout, be on the alert, because they know that once that capacity to demand ratio exceeds a certain percentage, there are automatic systems that kick in.
Right.
And so that's, of course, important because if there aren't these systems, everybody gets a blackout.
Yeah.
If there are these systems, some people get a blackout.
Yeah. And we're talking about, obviously, the March 16th quake, right? I think they've updated a lot of the grid infrastructure so that even if it goes like above magnitude 5 on the Japanese scale, it just automatically shuts off the power. So that way there's not going to be any, damage or whatever.
Although a large-scale blackout was ultimately averted on March 22nd, the power supply situation is expected to remain tight as the amount of water available for hydroelectric power generation used to increase supply is expected to be smaller this week, according to the power utility.
Quake damage has disrupted operations at the Hirono Thermal Power Station in Fukushima, run by TEPCO and Chubu Electric Power Co., and Electric Power Development Co.'s thermal plant in Kanagawa Prefecture.
So power supply in TEPCO's service area had been tight in recent weeks on the back of larger than usual electricity consumption due to cold weather, in addition to supply constraints.
A power cut was averted following additional requests from the industry ministry calling for saving electricity, in addition to apparent further reductions in electricity use by commercial users.
And we saw that all on TV, like they turned off all the lights on Tokyo Skytree and Tokyo Tower, and lots of big chains shut off their signs. And it was interesting. It really reminded me of the months following the 2011 triple disaster, because that's exactly what happened then too.
Yeah, my internet kept going on and off the next day. I think because NTT, freaking like the server farms they have, consume a huge amount of electricity. So,
and TEPCO was probably like, it would be great if you just, sort of throttled everybody's internet. They won't notice it. It's just the internet. What could go wrong? So about this earthquake, a powerful magnitude 7.4 earthquake hit off northeastern Japan late on March 16th, which left at least 4 people dead and several injured, and also caused a train on the Tohoku Shinkansen to derail.
Wow. At an intensity of upper 6 on the Japanese Shindo scale, many people find it impossible to remain standing or move without crawling. According to the Japan Meteorological Agency, at an intensity of upper 6 on the Japanese Shindo scale, many people find it impossible to remain standing or move without crawling. The jolts are strong, enough to toss people through the air.
I remember that. That sucked.
That was very scary. Even in Tokyo, I think it was only, 5 here?
Yeah, it was, I think, more like a 4 in many places, but stuff got knocked off of shelves. I think some older homes might have suffered worse damage, but it was a pretty darn big earthquake by Tennessee standards.
The scariest thing, there was a first wave of a quake, right? And then the second wave was just nonstop shaking. I thought a volcano was going off somewhere. Because I had never really experienced that long of an earthquake before.
I have.
Yeah, 311, I mean.
It was 31 flavors of shit.
Man.
So the magnitude 7.4 quake, which occurred in waters off Fukushima at a depth of about 57 kilometers, was also felt across a wide swath of Japan, including eastern, central, and western Japan, especially where Aaron and I were, apparently.
NHK News reported recently that recovery work on the Tohoku Shinkansen line will continue for the coming weeks after the train derailed in Miyagi Prefecture.
East Japan Railway Company said the train's emergency brake was applied after the quake was detected, but that 16 of its 17 cars unfortunately derailed.
As of this recording, JR workers have put 5 of the cars back on the rails. The company says it will take about 10 days to move the train.
Yes, unlike the trains that we played with as children, Shinkansen cars are extremely heavy.
I bet.
Getting them back on the rails once they are off the rails is very hard and takes a lot of people and a lot of time. So damage, including distorted rails and broken overhead power lines, has been confirmed at about 1,000 places across the Tohoku Shinkansen's line.
Investigators from the government's Transport Safety Board say the damage is mainly on the section where the train came to a halt, and that no damage is seen ahead. They suspect the train derailed right before or after it stopped. So it stopped on time. That's great.
Well, so it stopped because there's a system in place that basically tells Shinkansens to stop when an earthquake has been detected.
Even really small ones. I've been on a Shinkansen before and it stopped all of a sudden. And we were like in Inaka. It was really beautiful. I'm like, whoa, what's going on? And someone's like, oh, it's an earthquake. And I'm like, oh, damn. Nice system.
That's the system.
Yeah.
It's a very nice system because, I mean, imagine what would happen if there was an earthquake and you were going 300 kilometers an hour.
I'm riding a Shinkansen tomorrow, so I don't want to think about that.
I'm riding a Shinkansen next week and also don't want to think about that. Whoever invented that system, Tokyo Wave thanks you for your service.
Thank you, sir. Or madame.
So the Transport Safety Board hopes to clarify how the quake impacted the train to cause this unusual derailment.
Service remains suspended between Koriyama Station in Fukushima Prefecture and Ichinoseki Station in Iwate Prefecture. The company aims to fully resume the service around April 20th. Wow, that is quite a long time, huh?
Yeah, and so I have a new person joining my company from April the 1st, and they live in Sendai.
Oh, wow.
Guess where Sendai is? Past Koriyama Station.
Oh, man.
Guess how they had to come to Tokyo recently to do some paperwork?
They ended up using a plane?
Night bus.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
The bus systems. I always forget about the bus systems here in Japan.
Well, there's a lot of transport infrastructure, but you think about, basically anybody who's in Sendai, Iwate, Aomori, Akita, Hokkaido, they no longer have a fast rail link to Tokyo.
Yikes.
So they either have to take local trains, which takes a long time.
It's like 4 times the amount of time. Yeah.
Probably more,
Yeah.
depending on the location. And of course, there are flights, there are buses, etc. But Shinkansens are big. They carry large amounts of passengers.
Yeah.
Obviously, they weren't exactly full because travel hasn't resumed fully post-pandemic, and a lot of people are now working from home instead of regularly commuting. You know, there are people who commute from very far away places to work in Tokyo. Those people are probably doing lots of Hail Marys right now because pre-pandemic, they probably would have been screwed.
Yeah.
Because they can't get to work, literally. You know, this obviously, the Shinkansen problem is one thing, but I think this brings us back to Japan's electric power problem. Obviously, with the big void that has been created by the aversion to restart a lot of these nuclear power plants, Japan simply does not have the electricity generation capacity that it needs.
Yeah. It makes sense too. More and more devices, technology naturally progresses more and more. So there's always going to be an increase in the demand for consumption of electricity and for, internet and whatnot. So it really seems like they need to build out some more infrastructure. I know solar power is a big thing here. Solar farms are a big thing.
But it's just not efficient enough,
they can't build them fast enough and big enough. Yeah.
Exactly. And Japan is not a very flat country, so there are limited places to build these farms. And really, obviously, I think everyone's hoping that there will be some new generation. Maybe these smaller nuclear power plants might be one solution. People look to the future of fusion energy and lots of other very sci-fi sounding things. But we are here in the present. We have a very unsustainable electric power generation model here in Japan. And we really don't have any easy answers for how to confront it in the immediate future, which is the future we are presently confronted with.
Yep.
So what are we going to do? Restart nuclear power and wait for another big earthquake to screw everything up again? Or maybe we just have to go without internet for weeks?
We need some innovation.
Yes, please send innovation.
Literally. It probably has to come from abroad.
Maybe Elon Musk will stop tweeting and start making some new sort of electric power generation. He made a company called Tesla. He should put his money where his mouth is, but he's probably too busy in space eating Dogecoin.
But he's actually already launched an internet service provider that's completely free. Next thing would be energy. I'm sure that's on his list of things to do after he goes to Mars and becomes the king and ruler of Mars.
Yeah, I wish some of these, billionaires, I'm looking at you, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, would spend less time in space and more time making a new electric power generation system. We sure could use one. Ours is kind of broke.
Hey, listeners, that's right. You listener right there.
Who do you think should be our next guest on Tokyo Wave? Let us know. Drop us a line at wave@tokyowave.jp.
We hope you enjoyed Tokyo Wave.
If you haven't already, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube.
Join us again next week on Tokyo Wave.
And if you've listened this far, you're in for a surprise as we are approaching episode 100. Stay tuned as season 2 of Tokyo Wave comes with newer, bigger, brighter, faster,
sexier.
Basically, we're going to get a new photo.
We got a badass photo coming out soon, guys.
It's pretty cool. There might be guns.
And there might be a music video.
Stay tuned.